立法會主席。
The President.
我提醒議員。
If I may remind members, during the conduct of the meeting in this chamber, please do not shout. Otherwise, I may find your conduct to be inappropriate and I will have to order you to leave. So, members, please keep quiet. Now, may I ask members to please remain standing while the Chief Executive enters the chamber. The Chief Executive. Mr. Albert Chan, please go back to your seat. I said just now, if members continue to shout from your seat, I will order him to leave the chamber at once. The Chief Executive will first address the Council. The Chief Executive. Thank you, President. President, members of the public, I'm glad to attend again the question and answer session of the Legislative Council. The government attaches great importance to the executive-legislature relations. In the coming year, the administration and the Legislative Council will have to work together on a number of important and pressing political, economic, and livelihood issues. We have an onerous workload ahead, and the people of Hong Kong do expect the administration and the Legislative Council to complete our work on time. Some time ago, my colleagues have met with different political parties and people of different political views to discuss the constitutional development issues. Well, we may have different views, but we share the same wish. That is, in 2017, we will have universal suffrage for the CE election. To achieve this objective, we have to act strictly in accordance with the basic law and the relevant interpretations of the National People's Congress Standing Committee. We have to be pragmatic, we have to be accommodating, we have to iron out our differences, and we have to work together. And we are going to start a consultation exercise. I announced that there will be a consultation task force set up to be led by the Chief Secretary for the Administration. Members of the task force include the Secretary for Justice and the Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs. We strive to publish a consultation paper at the end of the year, and we'll formally initiate the public consultation exercise on the electoral methods for forming the Legislative Council and electing the Chief Executive in 2017 and 2018. And when the task force is ready, it will make an announcement of its work plan. Now, in Hong Kong, our development must take care of all fronts. Nothing can be missed. Constitutional development, is of course important, but we must not overlook livelihood and economic issues. In the property market, after the new term of the SL government took office, we adopted demand-side management measures, the so-called harsh measures, to curb soaring property prices. In the past weekend, some property developers offered discount for the new residential units they offered to counter or offset part of the effect of the harsh measures. Newspaper reports said that thousands of people queued up to buy properties. Newspapers also reported that 20% of the buyers were from the mainland. Some were speculators. At the end, all the units on offer were sold, and the developer offered more units at a higher price. This goes to show that if the government should even slightly adjust the harsh measures, the property market would be reinstated to a certain state. And in the same weekend, there's also brisk trade in the secondary market is a 4-month high because owners were willing to slash prices. This experience tells us that if the government should even slightly reduce the harsh measures, the property market may revert to the state it was in before the harsh measures were in place. So I have to ask here once again that the LegCo pass relevant legislation, the bills as soon as possible. Apart from housing issues, we also have to tackle issues on poverty, the elderly, environment, and other social and livelihood issues that will require huge private and government financial resources. Since this government took office, we have established an important philosophy. That is, we will address long-standing social issues through economic development, which is sustainable and at a high speed. Now, the world is changing, the country is developing, external environments are changing every minute, and they are becoming more and more complex. The benefits of adequate liquidity around the world could not last forever, and the world around is concerned about the possible impact of the reduction of the quantitative easing measures. And in the face of changes in the external environment, we must not overlook the new challenges. We have to stay alert. We have to do something. We have to reposition Hong Kong. And under new circumstances, we have to be clear about the role and function of Hong Kong and what role we can play in the development of the country and the world. The government is actively working on that. And we have to promote economic development. The aim is to allow Hong Kong's businesses to capitalize on our advantage and the opportunities presented by the country. Inside and outside the country, business opportunities abound. Hong Kong does not lack funds. We do not lack the technical know-how. In recent years, Hong Kong people have invested in various areas on the mainland, such as the financial industries, the property industry, business and professional services, even agriculture, fisheries and the mining industry. So there have been plenty of job opportunities and business development opportunities for Hong Kong people. And Hong Kong and mainland economic and trade relations are also developing rapidly. We have gone beyond the Guangdong province. We have also gone beyond conventional industries like the manufacturing industry and property industry. That's why the new term government has set up the Consultative Committee on Economic and Trade Cooperation between Hong Kong and the mainland to tap the opportunities available. And this committee will also look into possible opportunities presented by development in Nansha, Hengqin, Qianhai, and the Loop area. The new government also set up the Financial Services Development Council. It will look into ways to further develop the financial industries. It's about to complete its first batch of reports, and they will be submitted to the government. At the moment, we have moderate growth in our economy. Unemployment rate has been kept at a very low level, and businesses are operating well, and the government finances are also robust. So we are able to improve our standard of living. At the same time, we have to take care of the disadvantage. Right? We must understand this state of economy is not a given. We have to cherish what we have today. And if something should go wrong in our economy, then all our aspirations to improve people's livelihood will not be materialized. To promote the economy, the government has to work in three areas. First, at the government-to-government level. Two, the SAR government must promote Hong Kong to mainland businesses as a platform for financing and business development, or we could be their partners in going out. And third, we must help Hong Kong people to break into the mainland and overseas markets. We attach importance to foreign economic and trade relations. Recently, I attended the APEC summit meeting in Bali, Indonesia. I pointed out that Hong Kong, as China's international financial and trade center, as well as the offshore renminbi business center, we could help Asia-Pacific countries to build a platform for stable and long-term financial development. We could also help to promote trade liberalization in the region. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, what is your question? This is a question and answer session. This is not a speech delivery session. Yours is not a question, Mr. Leung Kwok-hong. Please be seated. Sorry, Mr. Chief Executive, please continue. I've also had bilateral meetings with leaders of some ASEAN countries to strive for the signing of free trade agreements with ASEAN, and that will promote the sustainable development of Hong Kong's economy. We also attach importance to mainland economic trade relations. There is further opening up and deepening of reform in the mainland. That's an irresistible trend. China will continue to grow at a fast pace. It has huge market potential. Hong Kong has the advantage of one country. At the same time, we benefit from the two systems. That is a global consensus. And those who benefit in Hong Kong will be just the bosses. The Census and Statistics Department's statistics shows that in 2010, 12 months before that, there are 175,000 people, Hong Kong people working on the mainland. And this figure does not include those who actually stay on the mainland and don't come back to Hong Kong. And our relations with the mainland is bilateral and two-way. There is more good than bad. We have to adopt a positive attitude as we look at the frequent exchanges under the one country, two systems. With increasing exchanges between the mainland and Hong Kong, some people have grievances about the competition brought about by mainland people in Hong Kong. We have to understand that. We have to find ways to resolve those grievances. But then there are people who keep blowing up such issues. They blow things out of proportion. Members, if you do not listen to my advice and you shout from your seat, I will have to ask you to leave the chamber. Please do not interrupt the Chief Executive as he speaks. Chief Executive, please. Thank you, President. But then there are people who keep sensationalizing matters. They blow things out of proportion. They exaggerate the conflicts between Hong Kong and mainlanders. And they also openly make statements about discriminating about people from outside Hong Kong and resenting them. This is not in line with the nature of Hong Kong as an open society. It's not in line with Hong Kong's interests. Hong Kong should not discriminate against ethnic minorities, and we should not discriminate against mainland compatriots. We do not want to see mainlanders resented in Hong Kong, and we do not want to see Hong Kong people being resented on the mainland. 3 months later, I will be delivering my second policy address. As in past practice, the consultation period of the policy address starts today, and this is joint consultation with the budget. I look forward to listening to the views from all sectors of the community. With one heart and one mind, we will take concrete action to realize the vision of making Hong Kong a better place. Thank you.
Mr. Abraham Sheck. President, we just heard the statement by the Chief Executive. Well, before yesterday, I was against Dr. Kwok's motion. I think it was right because you can see that the Chief Executive has the ability to resolve Hong Kong's problem. Just now, the Chief Executive said that, he talked about the relations between the executive and the legislature. I was pleased to hear that because during the past 2 months or so, I believe that the executive and legislature relationship was already at a very dangerous state, because when a lawmaker exercises his power to move an amendment to a bill at the scrutiny stage without even taking a look at his proposed amendment, if an administration tries to smear a lawmaker who is just doing his work, exercising his legal duties, then I think it's really quite dangerous. Please ask your question. Well, I'm moving on to that. Please ask your question. President, just now the Chief Executive once again referred to the cooling measures, and he said that during the past week or so, a property developer, tried to slash prices in order to promote the sale of the units. Well, this is a marketing measure. The administration has this measure, and then people will find ways to respond or counter that. This is only normal. And I believe that for business transaction, sale and purchase is just a normal business behavior. Please do not express your personal opinion. Yes, I'm moving on to that. Please ask your question then, says the President. Yes, with regard to the bill on the cooling measures, we support that, but then we have never asked the administration to dilute the cooling measures. We have never asked the administration not to introduce the cooling measures. What we are against is speculation on property. We support that, but then we can see that there are certain toxins in the cooling measures. So we are trying to ask them to try to disintoxicate that. Well, sorry, you have to ask your question. Yes, I'm moving on to that, President. I think the administration is saying that it is not prepared to accept any challenges, is not prepared to accept any amendment, but then it's also moving some amendments, is allowing developers to get refunds for redevelopment in the urban area. But then, all right, I'm asking my question now. Well, what I'm trying to amend is, or if you allow developers to undertake redevelopment in the urban area, how come for a permanent resident under statutory declaration, if there is no transaction or sale within the next 3 years, how come he is not able to get this refund? Well, under Basic Law, Article 25, legally everybody or every citizen is equal before the law. Sorry, Mr. Abraham Sheikh, you're still expressing your personal opinion. And if you do not ask your question right away, I'll have to ask you to sit down. Well, can you explain to the public why for a baby or child born out of non-Hong Kong or non-local parents, why his parents or friends can buy properties on his behalf, and yet for a permanent resident who has been paying tax for years and he has set up a company, and under Article 105 of the Basic Law, he has the right to choose to how he does his business, and if he sets up a company to buy property, he is treated as if he's a speculator and he has to pay the buyer's stamp duty. So what kind of fairness is there? Chief Executive. Well, just now I said in my statement that during the past weekend, a developer offered certain discounts in the sale of residential development. Well, what I meant was not to criticize or comment on what is happening in the market or any acts or behavior of individual developer. I agree with what Mr. Abraham Sheikh, that in Hong Kong, well, it's the right of the buyer and the vendor to adopt different strategies to engage in business transactions. The example that I cited was meant to illustrate that where there are measures in the market to dilute or to reduce the impact of the cooling measures, then there would be certain response. And it goes to show that if we try to dilute the cooling measures, then the situation might be reverted back to the situation where we had not introduced the cooling measures. So I meant no criticism at all. If you look at the prevailing environment, it's a very special situation. Number one, we know that we do not have enough supply, and that cannot be met within the short or near future. And the administration has worked very hard to increase supply as soon as possible. But then, for the time being, we haven't been able to meet the demand. And at the same time, we are faced with a super low or excessively low interest environment. Well, before the administration announced the cooling measures, the property market was increasing by 1 or 2% every week, and the community's response was very serious, and is about the affordability of the buyers. And other than that, we also have to be concerned about this. That is with the ever-rising property prices, that would also deal a blow to the financial and property market. That's why we had no alternative but to introduce the measures, and we hope that this council would support the administration's measures. So this is an extraordinary measure and an extraordinary time. As to the question asked by Mr. Abraham Sheikh, he referred to the Basic Law and so on. Well, in the bill that we have tabled before this council, asking members to approve them, well, actually is in line with all the laws of Hong Kong and the Basic Law. So Mr. Sheikh and other lawmakers, please be reassured about that. A brief follow-up, please. Well, the Chief Executive has not answered this question. How come for children of non-local parents, they do not have to pay the double stamp duty, and then for a Hong Kong permanent resident owning companies, if he's not engaged in speculation, how come he has to pay that tax? Well, for children of non-local parents, if they are not Hong Kong permanent residents, they are not Hong Kong permanent residents. But then, if their children are born in Hong Kong, if they are Hong Kong permanent residents, whether or not there is any trust relations between the parents and the children, that cannot be resolved by the cooling measures. Ms. Starry Lee, sorry, Mr. Sheikh, your question has been answered. Ms. Starry Lee, Well, for the Manila hostage saga, it took place 3 years ago, and what happened recently, as the elder brother of the tour leader said, is beyond his expectation, and it shows the determination of the ASEAN government in resolving this problem, so that for the victims and the bereaved families, the administration is trying to seek justice on their behalf, and very shortly, Hong Kong and the Philippines will be starting a very difficult negotiation, and the crux of the matter is whether or not we can work together to resolve this matter. And as the chief executive said, we have to have strategies in undertaking such negotiations. And in the community, there have been a lot of suggestions on imposing sanctions on the Philippines in order to make sure that the negotiations will succeed. And to expect that the Philippines government to start the negotiations, I think they are still dragging their feet. I suggest that we can start the stage 1 sanction, and we can also call upon the community or the public to ban or to boycott fruits and other goods from the Philippines. So can you share with us your thinking as to how we can create the best condition for the negotiations? Chief Executive. President, it's 3 years since the incident, and it's only now that we have managed to strive to start this government-to-government discussions. And the Philippines government, its stance during the past 3 years has been very clear. That's why I agree with what Ms. Dari Lee just said. She described the situation as difficult in terms of the work that we are about to engage in. I've met with the victims and the bereaved families. I promised them that I would be bearing this in mind, and I'll try to seek justice for them. I'll strive to have the Philippines government promise or undertake the demands that they gave, that they made, the 4 demands, that is compensation, apologies, and also no further incident afterwards, and so on. While I was attending the APEC summit meeting, I met the Philippine president at the common room, and my first objective to get his agreement so that we could sit down, and then there would be a formal meeting to discuss this issue. He agreed. So I managed to achieve the first objective, and after we sat down, the second objective was to strive to get his agreement that the 2 governments would send officials to engage in official talks. And after 40 minutes negotiations on this issue, he agreed. So the second objective was achieved. Coming back, I discussed with the Secretary for Security and other colleagues. We had a meeting on that. Afterwards, I reported that to the central authorities as to the outcome of my meeting with the Philippine government and some of our discussion results, and the central authorities supported our plan for the next stage. I immediately suggested that I should meet with the victims and the bereaved families, and then I met the press. With the central authorities' agreement, we sent an email to the Philippine government and the President's office to formally implement the agreement that was reached in Bali. That is, there should be official talks between the 2 governments. The Philippine President's office has already given a reply. That is, the officials from both governments would have its first talk, and that would start very soon. But then, as I said a day before yesterday to the press, after we have managed to achieve some results, after a certain stage, we will make appropriate announcements. We will also be maintaining very close liaison and communication with the victims and their families. But then, it's not possible for us to do so after every meeting by reporting the substance of our discussion to the public. That's why every time after we have managed to achieve the desired effect, then we would make announcements. As to what we're going to do next, that's the question asked by Ms. Dari Lee. We need to be united. Today, I received it's been many years since I last met him, and he's a colleague from my days as at a university council, and he's a student representative, and he said that it's a very good opportunity for Hong Kong people to be united, so that Hong Kong people can act in a united manner in the face of other parties. I fully agree with this view. In a community, including LegCo members, during the past few days, I could also see that political parties issue press releases asking the SAR government to impose sanctions. Yes, I'm aware of that. Whatever can be done is included in our plans. But then we will not be publicly announcing what we plan to do. I personally will also be setting an example. In dealing with this matter, I would not criticize or respond or even refute any comments or criticisms against me, because I'm working on one objective, and that is to seek justice for Hong Kong people in order to achieve the 4 objectives that I set out.
Ms. Dari Lee, President, Chief Executive, yes, you said you have a plan, you are taking steps to achieve results, but we all know who we're facing this time. You may have your strategy, they have their schemes as well. We can see that the Filipino strategy is to drag things out. So if they keep dragging their feet, we're not going to achieve anything in the negotiations. So would you extend the sanctions to the national level? That's to increase our bargaining power. Chief Executive. Thank you, President. The central authorities are very much concerned about this issue. At Bali, I mentioned this incident to the state leader, the state president. I asked the central authorities to pay attention to the demands of the victims and the bereaved families. It wasn't the first time that I did so, but in Bali, President Xi Jinping expressed a particular concern. On the spot, he asked the Revenue Department to follow up on the issue. And then you saw the spokesman of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also our Premier, what he said in Brunei. On the second day after I met the Filipino president, it was day 2 of the APEC leaders meeting. It was the last day, actually, of the meeting. After the meeting, there was a working lunch among leaders. After the working lunch, everybody would leave. And the president had to leave for the airport to go back to Beijing. The president was in front of me, I was behind him, and then he turned his head around. He asked me on his own volition, yesterday, how did things go in your talk with the Philippines president? And I reported to him that there was some progress, that is both sides agreed to send officials to continue the talks. I did not have a chance to give him a detailed report because we were going out into the garden walking, but it shows that our president takes a personal interest in the matter. And after we came back to Hong Kong, I gave a report to the central authorities. So in the next step of our plan, definitely, we will need the support of the country in our work in many areas. So I will continue to give reports to the central authorities, and if necessary, I will make requests to the central authorities. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Thank you, President. The Executive Council, under your leadership, made a decision on the granting of free domestic TV license recently. The decision did not command any credibility. It was on no ground. It showed disregard to public views. It had no regard to justice. We could only say it was a black box operation. So my question is this, President. In accordance with Article 56(3) of the Basic Law, if the Chief Executive does not accept a majority opinion of the Executive Council, he or she shall put the specific reasons on record. Can I ask you now, is it the case that the majority of EXCO members at the meeting agreed that a license should not be given to the Hong Kong TV network? Yes or no? Mr. Chief Executive. President, I think Mr. Dennis Kwok should know very well the basic law and the mode of operation of the Executive Council. Before and after 1997, Executive Council meetings are kept confidential. Before or after 1997, no Chief Executive or government would answer Mr. Dennis Kwok's question like that. We have the duty to keep the meetings confidential. Now, we took a serious position in meetings. We take the meetings seriously. As for the content of the meetings and the position expressed by EXCO members, this is never made public. The Chief Executive hasn't asked my question, is wasting our time. I'm asking you, in accordance with the basic law, if the majority of EXCO members comes to a certain view and you do not accept it, you have to put the specific reasons on record. I'm asking you again, in accordance with Article 56(3). Is it the case that the majority of EXCO members believe you should not grant a license to the Hong Kong TV network? Yes or no? Now, the discussion of the EXCO or the outcome of the discussion, I really cannot answer your question, Mr. Dennis Kwok. If there is anything, if there is a circumstance that arises and I have to act in accordance with basic law, I would most certainly do so. Mr. Frankie Yik. President, I'm glad to learn from the CE in his opening remarks that on the continuous development of Hong Kong's economy, he expresses great concern. Now, at the start of the new session of the Legislative Council, we had a number of motion debates. Members quoted competitiveness reports, and we can see that our competitiveness is sliding in all these reports. And then in your first post address, you stressed the importance of strengthening Hong Kong's position as a logistics hub. You say that we have to do more. And there's going to be a consultancy report that will be completed on the Hong Kong port strategy, and then you want to enhance our status as an international shipping center, and then you will come up with relevant policies. But then the consultant, supposedly the consultancy studies to be completed in the middle of the year, and then it's been delayed to September. Still, we haven't heard anything. Can you tell us about these two consultancy studies? When might they be completed? And when will you then formulate policies to or formulate a blueprint on the development of the shipping and logistics sector upon the publication of these reports? Chief Executive, we'll ask the consultant firms to complete the reports as soon as possible. And I can assure you here, members, I and the SAR government often mention the importance of logistics to Hong Kong. is not just an important industry for Hong Kong. This is one industry that provides a large number of job opportunities to the grassroots sector. So we don't just look at the industry's contribution to our GDP, we also look at its contribution to our labor market. Now, Mr. Yik mentioned upgrading our logistics industry. Well, we've been talking about it for years. We're not just focusing on cargo transportation. Our logistics center is not just about moving containers or cargo. We should do something similar to what London does, whether it be sea transport or aviation transport. That is, we should provide services as well, like the leasing of planes, registration, financing, and so on. I'm glad to see that in Hong Kong, there are already quite a number of banks and law firms going into this market, and the momentum is good. Now, on logistics, like container services, cargo services, airport services, and so on, we actually benefit from the development of the mainland market and the scale of economy of the mainland market, and we attach great importance to such work, and we will ask the consultants to complete the reports as soon as possible. Mr. Frankie Yik? Chief Executive, at this stage, there's not yet a roadmap and a timetable. So in the near term, would you be rolling out any measures? You mentioned high value added tasks. Actually, my sector has already given a lot of ideas to the government. I hope that in the upcoming policy address, you will formally respond to our suggestions. Chief Executive, I and the government, even the last government, have all along taken interest in the matter. For example, when I was at the City University, as the chairman of the council, just a few days after I assumed the post, I sat down with the vice chancellor of the City U to see how we could start a master program on shipping and logistics and so on. And the program was well received and was established. You might recall 1 year, $3 million were given to the City U to establish a scholarship that shows that I and the SL government attach great importance to potential in this sector. Mr. Sin Kung Kai. Well, some say that I don't get to choose the chief executive, I don't get to choose the executive council, and now the government won't even give me a choice of TV programs. Now, the chief executive says that he attaches great importance to public opinion, but on the granting of TV license, he's acting against the will of the people. He's pitching himself against the people. All opinion polls show that the public expect the government to grant all 3 licenses, but the government is bent on granting just 2 licenses. Now, there is a web page or Facebook page that's attracted over 430,000 likes. Is a page to support Hong Kong TV network. So that shows that you're at least going against 430,000 people. So my question is straightforward. What study has the Executive Council done to say that the market could only accommodate 4 TV operators, not 5? And why do you go back on the recommendations of the Broadcasting Authority and issue only 2 licenses? And how come you take out the number 2, not the number 3 on the list?
Chief Executive, we understand that the community has very strong reaction to the fact that the HKTVN or network has not been issued with a license, and there are also demands for the administration to disclose the reason why the applicant has not been granted approval in principle to operate a TV station. Well, as far as possible, we try to be open and transparent in our work, but then we also have to balance other factors. On this incident, it's not appropriate for us to disclose the justifications for not issuing or issuing TV licenses openly. Other than the fact that TVB filed for a judicial review, yesterday the administration already received the relevant party, that is the decision on the approval in principle to issue licenses. There was already an application for judicial review. As legal proceedings have already been instituted, it's even more inappropriate for the administration to comment on this. Secondly, with regard to the decision on the TV license application, according to the system, the EXCO would have to make the decision. So it's not a system that has been laid down by this term of government. It's been a long-established system. That is, the EXCO will have to make the decision, and all along, all the discussions or deliberations in the EXCO would not be made open or disclosed to the public. With regard to the discussion or deliberation by the EXCO on the TV license application, is no exception. We have to work within the system, or else that would also affect the mechanism of the EXCO and the good operation of the EXCO. Thirdly, with regard to the details of the deliberation and also the justifications involve the three applicants' sensitive commercial information or even commercial secrets, and if we just disclose them lightly, then that might be prejudicial to the three applicants, and that could also give rise to legal disputes. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, President, the Chief Executive refuses to disclose these secrets and is going to hurt the feelings between you and the public, and Ricky Wong is accusing you that you're operating in a black box. But then you have not answered my question. How come the number 2 has been kicked out instead of number 3? How come you are reverting the recommendation by the consultant? How come you did not issue all 3 licenses? Chief Executive, President, as we know, we try to introduce competition on this occasion by issuing 2 more licenses. Instead of having 2 free-to-air TV licenses, we are going to increase that to 4. So there will be 4 free-to-air TV licenses. As far as the community and the public are concerned, there's going to be very significant impact. That's why, to introduce appropriate competition in the market and also to do things in the best interest of a community, on the basis of those premises, how we look at the legal provisions and the policy and also the procedures in dealing with these 3 applications. We have been very cautious and careful, and we have to look at the relevant policy and legal provisions. The most important thing is to introduce competition in the interest of the community. Other than upholding procedural justice, we also have to act in accordance with the system. It's not a system that has been laid down by myself or this government. We have to look at what Mr. Sin Chung Kai just said. He referred to one single factor. We also had the broadcasting ordinance and also the statutory requirements under that piece of legislation, and also the prevailing broadcasting policy, and also we had the then broadcasting authority, and now the communications authority. We had the guidance notes and the assessment criteria, and also the information provided by the 3 applicants, and also the CA's report, and also the consultancy reports, recommendations, and so on. With regard to the documents submitted by the applicants and the representations, and also response and relevant opinion, and also the latest developments, and also all the relevant information related to public interest, including the free-to-air TV market sustainability and also operating ability. In other words, if we issue new and extra licenses, the kind of impact that might have on the local television market. That's why we have considered multiple factors instead of just one single factor. Mr. Wong Kwok Heng. Thank you, President. Chief Executive, 7 years ago, we had the one-limb handicapped person asking for assistance, and a few years ago the Ombudsman also did a very detailed investigation and came up with a report, and still the Chief Executive dragged his feet, and together with the disabled persons, in particular those who lost one limb, I also petition you as to what needs to be done. And you said in your policy address, para 109, that they would be allowed to apply for disability allowance. But then the Labour and Welfare Bureau continued to drag its feet, and there is still no roadmap or timetable as to when they would be eligible for disability allowance. I'd like to know when they would be eligible for disability allowance, and also within the Labour and Welfare Bureau, before the findings of a study is out, can they at least be granted this travelling assistance? And in the policy address, from the date of the announcement of the policy address, can they be allowed to backdate it to that day so that that would be fairer to them? So, Chief Executive, on this occasion, can you give us a positive answer so that I do not have to bring this limb with me, so that I do not have to go after the existing term of government in order to settle the bill? Chief Executive, Mr. Wong Kwok Hing has given his views to me on the needs and the plight of these people who have lost their limbs. And other than raising this with me during the election campaign, I still recall on another occasion after I was elected in the prospective Chief Executive office, I remember Mr. Wong Kwok Hing also took with him many people who had lost their limbs to my office, and we had a rather lengthy discussion. I could still vividly recall what we said at the meeting, and I remember those at the meeting because they were putting on prosthetics because they have lost their limbs, and when they took public transport, many people might not be aware of the fact that they had lost their limbs, and very few people would give them their seats, and as a result, their situation was very poor. And Mr. Wong Kwok Hing told me that nothing had been done before I assumed office, and subsequently I asked the LWB to look into it, and early this year they already set up an interdepartmental working group to look into it, and also under the Poverty Commission there was a task force on retirement protection and so on looking into this, and we are looking at what the Poverty Commission can do. I understand that on the 8th of July, before the summer recess, the LWB already reported on the progress of the work by the task force to the welfare panel of this council. I would be urging it to complete this work as soon as possible. Mr. Wong Kwok Hing, President, the Chief Executive has not answered my question, the latter part of my question. That is, before the Interdepartmental Working Group under the LWB completed its study, is it possible for us to allow them to immediately benefit from the $2 concessionary fare? And also, can you backdate the allowance to the day on which you announced the policy address? Because we have no idea as to when the Interdepartmental Working Group under the leadership of Mr. Matthew Cheung can complete its work. Would it take 3 or 4 years? Could it be that even after this term of government has completed its term, the task force might still not be completing its work? We are very concerned about their plight, so can you at least offer them this concessionary fare? Chief Executive, I don't think it will take that long. I don't think we would not be able to come up with a report before the end of the term of this government. Well, in coming up with any policy, we need to consider things comprehensively. What can be done in the near term to help relieve these people with disabilities? As I've told you, I've already talked to the LWB, and I'm seeking their advice. And the government's policy would also cover the following things. We have discussed that before. Well, the definition on the one-limb disability. So the relevant reports will be available, and then we will come up with a comprehensive and sustainable policy on that. Thank you. Mr. Albert Chan.
President, I'm wearing a black top because since the chief executive assumed his office, we have plenty of campaigns asking people to wear black. The anti-national education dilemma, ferry disaster, the BBC case, the Hong Kong U staff protest, students campaign, and the City U case, and latest the TV license case. And this Sunday, tens of thousands of people will be wearing black at the central government offices. So this is us saying no to the Hong Kong Communist Party ruling Hong Kong. Mr. Albert Chan, please come to your question. My question is this, President. The chief executive takes the lead to cause rifts in the community. He's destroying Hong Kong. The Filipino incident brought us complete disgrace. We are humiliated. Now, in the past, we were bullied by the British authorities, French authorities, but even the Philippines now bullies Hong Kong. You've brought us shame. The people power has proposed sanctions against the Philippines, economic sanctions, that is. And Philippines press also said that the economic sanctions proposed by people power would really hit them. It's not like what you do, you know, just putting on a smile in front of the Philippines president. So would you now take the determination to bring back honor to Hong Kong people? Will you impose economic sanction on the Philippines? Will you seek justice for those who have died? Chief Executive. Well, in reply to Ms. Starry Lee's question, I said we have to stand united in facing a foreign country. Among the 7.1 million people, I said I would therefore not refute ungrounded allegations and criticisms against me. When I was in Bali and when I came back, I've tried to seek justice for the victims and the bereaved families so that the demands of their demands could be met. And we have made some progress at different stages. In my handling of the case, I've studied a lot of documents over the past 3 years. The Legislative Council had meetings on the incident. Many members spoke. I read those records as well. From the records, I did not see the emotional stance of Mr. Albert Chan. That is from those records in the past 3 years. But after I took up this case, and I managed to achieve some milestone progress, then Mr. Albert Chan made this statement. Whether it's fair or not, I think I will leave it to people to judge. Mr. Albert Chan, I'm so angry because I see that you are so shameless. You were just giggling in a silly manner in front of the Philippines president. This chief executive is humiliating Hong Kong people. His brought us shame and disgrace, and those who die won't want to see you conducting yourself in that manner in front of the Philippines president. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong, your question, please. Now, Mr. Albert Chan said that the chief executive looked like a dog, and I strongly protest that. That's a personal attack. Mr. Albert Chan, if you do not ask a supplementary question, please sit down. My supplementary question is this. even for families of the dead. They would not want you to curtsy that way and bring shame to Hong Kong. Mr. Wong Ip Kwok Hing, I believe what Mr. Albert Chan said was offending. Can you make a ruling, please, President? Mr. Albert Chan, I must remind you again, you must not be offensive in your speech. And you must not offend any members or government officials here. That's just objective description. Mr. Albert Chan, if you've asked a question, please take your seat. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, point of order. Well, the Legislative Council cannot humiliate or insult a dog. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, I have no intention of debating with you on what is meant by offensive remarks. I think members know very well, and the public are following this meeting. They are able to judge for themselves. Mr. Albert Chan, please do not speak again. But I have a question, Mr. President. I have a follow-up question. I said that even the Philippines press that our proposal would really hit them. And you, as the Chief Executive, you have the duty to find effective means to seek justice for the victims and the bereaved families. Would you be a man and take some concrete action instead of just speaking nonsense like a dog? President, many members, including myself, has raised the point. Can you please observe the rules of procedure? A member has used offensive words against the Chief Executive. It's about the dignity of this council. President, please follow the rules of procedure. You must ask the member who made the insulting remarks to retract his remarks. This is to preserve the dignity of the people of Hong Kong and this council. Mr. Wong Kwok Kin, President, as the President, you ought to maintain the order of meetings in this council. Just now, Mr. Ip Kwok Pim has asked you to make a ruling, but you have not made a ruling. Can such a term be used? And if such a term has been used, should it be retracted? You have not taken any action. And then Mr. Albert Chan keeps using insulting words in his speech. President, I think you should observe the order. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, I think they're abusing the point of order. Now, the first time when Donald Tsang was here, you evicted me. They're abusing the rules of procedure. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, please sit down. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, please take your seat. Members, now this is the question and answer session attended by the Chief Executive. He's here to answer members' questions on issues of the greatest concern to the people. So this is a question and answer session, and the Chief Executive gives us the latest views and policies of the government. I'm sure those who are watching the live broadcast of this meeting would like to hear members' questions and the Chief Executive's reply in such a way that such questions and answers would address their biggest concern. They don't want to see us hurling insults at each other, or members hurling insults at each other. Just now, the FTU members and Mr. Kwok Him pointed out certain things. We know that in the past in this chamber, such situation often arises. Members, I have already warned Mr. Albert Chan. If I now debate with him as to which of his remarks should be retracted, it will just waste more of the time of the public. Please, let's not dwell on this point. Mr. Albert Chan has already asked this question. Mr. Albert Chan, if you shout again from your seat, I will order you to leave the chamber immediately. Members, please allow the Chief Executive to answer members' questions on issues of greatest concern to the public. I was disrupted. I didn't finish asking my follow-up question. Mr. Albert Chan, if you did not make offensive allegations from the start. There's no way the chief executive could have answered the question. Otherwise, he could have told you specifically the so-called sanction measures you propose, whether it's appropriate. But I think you've spent far too much time already.
Mr. Ma Fong-Kwok. Sorry, Chief Executive. Yes, President. Well, Mr. Albert Chan is of the view that I was trying to dodge the crux of his question in his supplementary question. Well, before I move on, I'd like to say this. Any member of the legislature in any community, if a lawmaker puts anything to the head of the government like that, is offensive. On other subjects, I might not have tolerated what Albert Chan has done, but then on the incident involving the victims and the bereaved families of the Manila hostage incident, I put up with Mr. Albert Chan. That's why when I answer his supplementary question, I try to answer the crux of his question about the strategy and sanctions. We do have strategies in taking the matter forward. We do have our own plans. Well, at the common room of the Bali summit, I strive to get an opportunity to sit down to talk to him, and then after we managed to sit down, I also strive to have senior officials engaging in talks. That's also part of our plan and strategy. And also, I tried to get the support of central authorities. That was also part of our plan. So we managed to make step-by-step progress. And moving on, would be adopting soft and hard approaches. So we will be adopting multi-pronged approach in order to achieve our target. Just now, in my answer to Ms. Starry Lee's questions, I already made that clear. We have comprehensive planning for that, but then today we are not going to disclose the details of our planning and our strategies to the community and in public. This is a live broadcast question and answer session with media attendance. I'm not going to answer those questions here. As Mr. Albert Chan should be aware, the other side, the Philippine government, and its general consulate in Hong Kong will be watching TV too. Mr. Ma Fong-Kwok. Mr. Albert Chan, you have to leave the chambers immediately. You have to leave the chambers immediately. Down with the communist regime. You're completely incompetent. Mr. Raymond Chan. Mr. Raymond Chan, you also have to leave the chambers immediately.
陳志全議員，你立即離開會議廳。
Mr. Raymond Chan, you have to leave the chambers immediately.
議員。
Mr. Raymond Chan, please stop shouting. You have to leave the chambers immediately.
Ma Fong-Kwok議員。
Mr. Ma Fong-Kwok. Thank you, President. Revitalizing industrial buildings policy, since it was implemented on the 1st of April 2010, 1,400 out of the 1,400 buildings, only 71 were given approval for revitalization. And the most important thing is we did not manage to release idling land for further development. Instead, prices have gone up, and it more than doubled within a short space of time, and many artists and groups have, as a result, been taking up this additional financial burden. And also because of the Energizing Kowloon East project, industrial buildings have also seen their prices gone up very substantially, and rentals have also gone up. Many arts groups have to be relocated to other less expensive areas. And if that should continue, then many arts groups and the arts community would be disappearing very quickly. So my question for the Chief Executive is, how would you assess this policy on revitalizing industrial buildings, and also where the room is being reduced and in fact is quickly diminishing and disappearing? So what kind of policy will be introduced to salvage the situation? So how are you going to realize your pledge that you're going to support culture and creative industry? How can it not be turned into an empty promise? Chief Executive. President, it's like anything that has to do with housing and land. How are we going to optimize the use of our industrial buildings by coming up with a good policy on revitalizing industrial buildings to ensure that the users of these buildings will find that affordable? While at the same time, we also have to ensure that when they use such industrial buildings, it will be safe, and there are other considerations. Indeed, this is a very difficult subject. It's not just about the difficulty in revitalizing industrial buildings, in using land, and in implementing other housing policies. Equally, they are very difficult issues. We will try our very best in implementing the policy on revitalizing industrial buildings. But then at the same time, when we come up with such policies for the owners and the users, we have to be fair. We must not be doing this at the expense of the interests of the taxpayers. It also involves the fact that if the administration would like to resume the land, what kind of compensation should be offered, and so on. Well, we have to revitalize industrial buildings. We will continue with that effort. And recently, we had some thinking and some decisions. But then I'd also like to take this opportunity to report to you a fact. We should not pin too much hope on the policy to revitalize industrial buildings, thinking that by revitalizing industrial buildings, we'll be able to release a lot of the currently vacant industrial buildings for certain users to ease the situation and also ease the pressure on rising rents for office accommodation, because the vacancy rate in industrial buildings has been low. Why is that the case? That's because many people who are not able to afford the high rents, or who do not want to pay the rents in other types of buildings because the rents are too high for them. So many of them have already moved into industrial buildings. That's why subdivided flats in industrial buildings is a good example. That's why we will continue to revitalize industrial buildings. The SAR government, on the issue of land and housing, we have spent a lot of time and effort on that. I think it's for all to see. But then, in the long run, if we really want to resolve the inadequate supply of housing and land in Hong Kong, then including the arts and cultural sector, we have to ensure that there is a roof above their head. Well, in fact, the crux is not on the policy to revitalize industrial buildings. I have to be honest with you. Well, in the long run, what we need to do is, well, we cannot just find spaces here and there. If that is the case, then we're not going to resolve the problem once and for all. In fact, I also have to report this to you. That is, we have to look at this Qianhai. That is reclamation, because actually we have to look at the loop area. Well, for 1 kilometer square of area, it's been left idle. It's been left idle for 16 years. It's been very difficult, but then we would try to see if anything can be done about it, because one of the most important uses of the loop area is for the creative industry, and that would help solve the problem in the longer term. That's to address the point raised by Mr. Ma Fong Kwok. But then we would also be coming up with the long-term policy on revitalizing industrial buildings. Mr. Ma Fong Kwok, the Chief Executive has not answered my question. Well, because of the introduction of this policy, we haven't really seen the benefit. And actually, we have it has backfired. Many arts groups, including some sports groups, for a long time, they've been hiding in these industrial buildings. But then with the introduction of this policy, in fact, they've been squeezed out. And many have actually been forced to move out, and actually many are being evicted. So how are you going to salvage that situation? According to the Chief Executive just now, he was saying that we should not pin too much hope on this policy. If that's the case, then you should not have promoted that very extensively to the owners, and as a result, the owners might be raising rents and they might be squeezing out these tenants. Chief Executive, with regard to the rent levels, well, in the market, it's a question of supply and demand. So it's the outcome of supply and demand in the market, and there is no such thing as projection. It's mainly about people trying to rent or lease a unit, and there is no way that they can speculate on it. And if demand outstrips supply, then rents will go up. So to resolve this problem, I think the root solution is to increase supply in order to meet the demand by the arts and cultural sector. Mr. Peter Cheung.
Chief Executive, last week at the Poverty Summit, the poverty line was announced. I believe the Commission on Poverty will then be discussing various issues and measures. Now, the Commission on Poverty will only have a meeting next month, but I've heard recently that the government would confirm support for home carers and provide an allowance for home carers. But I've also heard that the allowance would be only for carers for the elderly, whereas for carers for people with disabilities, they will be kept out of the policy. Now, there's a 90-year-old elderly person, Uncle Cheung. He's well known in the social welfare sector. He's a service user. He's been taking care of his mentally handicapped child for over 50 years, and there are plenty of such cases. Some time ago, NGOs working with the people with disabilities have done a survey. 75% of the carers found the work demanding physically, and they also have anxiety about the future. More than 40% of the children have multiple disabilities, and for 30% of the households living below the poverty line are living below the poverty line, and then 70% of the parents do not get more than 6 hours of sleep a day. Can you come to your question, please? So this is the suffering of these parents, but how many of us know about it? I want to tell the Chief Executive today. Can I ask the Chief Executive this? Carers allowance. Do you think it should be given to both the carers for the elderly and carers for people with disabilities? Chief Executive. President Mr. Peter Cheung mentioned what he heard. I couldn't confirm that yet. Now, during the election, I met with different sectors and their representatives. Well, I met both with the healthcare sector, and second on the list was the social welfare sector. I met with many of them. Mr. Peter Cheung mentioned the statistics. He also said that actually some carers actually told me the difficulties they had, and I remember that very vividly. This term of the SAL government in taking care of the disadvantaged, including the elderly, the infirm, people with disabilities, and so on, we have definitely adopted a multi-pronged approach. We have done a lot. How could we take care of the carers of people with disabilities through various channels. The SAO government will continue to explore that. We know the needs are there. What can we do? How much can we do? Through what channel can we do it? Hopefully, we could continue to explore that with the social welfare sector, including Mr. Peter Cheung. Mr. Peter Cheung. Well, I think the Chief Executive's reply is positive, but I hope the Chief Executive will ask the Commission on Poverty to come up with some positive outcome on this issue. Chief Executive? I think we have to consider the matter in a comprehensive and systematic manner. Now, apart from giving support to the carers, we have to consider the scenario when carers themselves cannot even take care of themselves. And what about homes? Well, Mr. Cheung did not mention that just now, but I'm sure you still remember. This is still a pressing and difficult issue. And homes, again, what does this boil down to? Land or rezoning of land? Well, as I said, we know the needs are there. We should adopt a multi-channel and systematic approach in addressing the issue. Thank you. Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Thank you, President. In your election manifesto on employees' rights, you said you will set up a task force to include employers and employees' representatives and also Labour Department's representatives to look into various interest protection for employees. Now, you've been in post for more than a year. What have you done? And would you set up such a task force? Chief Executive? Well, this issue covers a wide array of issues, and such issues also complex. On how we could deliver on this election pledge, there is still internal discussion within the government. And we don't have a concrete timetable yet for setting up the task force, but most definitely we will continue with our work. Mr. Poon Siu Ping, in February this year, I moved a motion on protecting occupational safety. The motion was carried to this council. We asked the government to review the legislation on construction site safety so that we could reduce the number of deaths and injuries. And then for employees' compensation fund, that's a consensus between employers and employees, actually. So would you consider setting up a central employees' compensation fund? Chief Executive. Well, as I said, on labor protection, death and injury protection and so on, we will consider all aspects of these matters because they are complex, and we will press on with our work, but definitely we would consider all aspects. Thank you. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Thank you, President. Well, I am staying here because I want to ask you this question, so I'm putting up with the humiliation. Now, you said in response to Mr. Sin Chung Kai or Mr. Dennis Kwok that there is the confidentiality rule. But there's one thing that doesn't need to be kept confidential. I've asked you many times about your BVI company. Yesterday, Carrie Jiang did not quite answer the question. I asked you to make an announcement on the details of the operation of a BVI company. And she said that was a trustee and your wife was a beneficiary. I didn't know what she answered. Now you're here today? Great. I'm asking you. You said you'll be open and public. Can you please come to your question? Now this is a black box and you drill open, that's the BVI company right there. There are two issues about this company. I'll be gentle. First, BVI is a tax haven. Definitely your company is involved in tax evasion. Paul Chan has two companies, you have one. So you are brothers and on this. Mr. Leung Kwok, please watch your language. Please come to your question at once. I want to ask you, President, to ask the Chief Executive this. When are you going to make public the business details of your BVI company? Paul Chen has 2 BVI companies. We can't find out more details about it. If you've asked a question, please sit down. Are you taking the lead to evade tax in the British Virgin Islands? What sort of business are you trying to hide? Is there any conflict with Ricky Wong's company, with your BVI's companies? That's why you don't grant him the license. Have you got my question with your level of intelligence? Have you got my question? Mr. Leung Kwok, please sit down at once. President, the Chief Executive, is taking the lead to evade tax. BVI companies, they are set up to evade tax. Mr. Leung Kwok, if you don't sit down, I will ask you to leave at once. Mr. Leung Kwok, please sit down at once. President, BVI companies and other offshore companies equate tax evasion. I think that's against basic business knowledge. I've read declaration of many public officers, including a business declaration of interest of members of this council in the last term. Now, many companies own BVI companies or offshore companies. For all my company shares, I have made that public in accordance with the declaration requirements. And I have taken the initiative to go further than what the system requires. I have handed the company to a trustee.
Mr. Leung Kwok, my question has not been answered. Number one, well, of course, the BVI company cannot evade tax directly because we have no idea as to what kind of business you're involved in. That's why, I'm here to reason things out. That's why I'm asking this question. It's very simple. If you cannot trust us, then can you ask Mr. Justice Andrew Lee to look at the details of operation for this company, and if he thinks it's okay after checking it, then I'll not be pursuing it any further. So can you do this? Well, you said that you would be honest and frank with us, and you'll be open. So why can't this be done? So my question for him is that he has to be accountable instead of just making pledges. Well, why are you not prepared to open up with regard to the business of your BVI company? You said that you would be prepared to be open and honest with us. Mr. Leung, if you do not stop that, then I will not be allowing you to stay there. President, our system does not require public officers, including the chief executive, to publish the details of his offshore company. There is no requirement for public officers to disclose any details of his non-offshore companies, including his company anywhere. I've already complied with the requirement. I've made the declaration. On top of that, I've actually entrusted the company to a trustee. You referred to Mr. Justice Andrew Lee with regard to the Independent Committee on the Prevention of Acceptance of Advantage. We have already acted in accordance with the recommendations by that committee chaired by Mr. Justice Lee. Mr. Leung Kwok, please sit down. Mr. Leung Kwok, your time for asking questions has been up. Is up. Mr. Leung Kwok, Mr. Leung Kwok, please leave the chambers immediately. Please do not rush forward. You have to leave the chambers immediately. You have not answered my question. How can you claim to be open and honest? Leave the chambers immediately. Mr. Martin Liao. Chief Executive. As we all know, housing issue is the top priority of this term of government. As we can see, you just launched the long-term housing strategy. But then in many areas, as the Chief Executive has pointed out earlier on, the SAR government is also concerned about how it can promote economic growth and how we can develop some new emerging and sustainable industries. But then according to the planning department's land use statistics, commercial use accounts for some 0.4% of the total land use in Hong Kong. So my question for the Chief Executive is, where there is serious shortage of supply in land in terms of residential use and commercial use, how can we strike the right balance? Chief Executive. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, President. Hong Kong's economic activities require land and housing. At present, on different land uses, our planning and deployment is a very difficult task. The SAR government is looking into the needs of different industries in terms of the use of land. So we are conducting studies on that so that we'll be able to embark on land planning. Mr. Martin Liao also referred to the LTHS committee, and the LTHS committee is to look at our long-term housing need, and we try to translate that demand into land zoning and development. Moving on, we will also be looking at the needs by different sectors of the community in terms of land use. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to report to you, President, that on the issue of land use, what our considerations are. Residential units need land. Commercial and business activities also require land, but then there are other activities that would also require land. Well, taking the different economic sectors as an example, we also have farmers who would like to resume farming, and we also attach importance to that. Therefore, we also have agricultural needs. Just now, Mr. Frankie Yik also referred to the logistics industry. The logistics industry would also require a lot of land, in particular, the storage of containers. In a community, very often, people might make suggestions on how we can develop land, and they would say that in certain areas, we have areas where they are stacking up containers there. Why can't we develop those sites for housing? But then containers also need to have yards. So it's not just within the backup area of container terminals. Even outside container terminals, they also need to have storage yards. Just last weekend, I went to Tseung Kwan O on my own in a car, and there was this 1 square kilometer land. And if you look at our overall operation and its demand on land use, or demolishing buildings, and also the waste materials that could be generated, and also if we want to dig up tunnels for the construction of the MTR, so the debris that has arisen from that, because we do not have extensive reclamation plan, that would also require land to store up such materials. And when I was there, I could see heavy vehicles carrying such debris going into and out of that site. And according to the departmental staff, I was told that, they almost do it non-stop, year in, year round, and then the heavy trucks would be going into and out of that site. We're talking about over 1,000 trucks. Is quite a scene. But then with regard to the storage of debris and waste materials, and if we can take that out, is a temporary storage area. We're talking about 1 square kilometer of land. Then we'll be able to resolve a lot of problems, including housing and so on. Well, in the past, that has never been done, and is a foregone thing. But then different departments are working on that. We are looking into the long-term demand for land in engaging in our economic activities. We haven't come to any conclusion yet. If we do not have extensive land development, including reclamation, if we do not engage in extensive land development, then not only would our housing problem not be improved, our economic development would also be subject to a lot of constraints. With massive land development plans, inevitably there will be opposition voices. We do understand that, whether or not it's for environmental protection, whether it's for the need to relocate some of the operations or businesses or residents and so on. But then all in all, I'd like to make an appeal here. We have to look at the overall and long-term interests of a community. Well, some criticisms have to be taken on board. We have to be humble. We have to be modest. We have to attach importance to that. We will try to resolve all the problems. But then no extensive land development plan could proceed with unanimous support from the community. There is a story saying that a grandpa and a grandchild were walking on the street, and then the grandchild was on the back, was riding on a donkey, and then either one riding on the donkey would be criticized, and if both ride on the donkey, then they would say that they were actually abusing the animal, and in the end they bought a rope from the market and they tried to carry the donkey home. Yes, there are bound to be criticisms, but then for those of us in public office, including the administration, the executive, and the legislature, we all hope that we have to work in the interest of a community. We have to look at the long-term needs of our economic development. We have to make difficult decisions. Well, on land planning, as I've said in the past, we have to think broad. It's not just about housing needs. I agree with Mr. Martin Liao. We have to consider our industry's needs. We also have to think in the long term. And thirdly, we have to make difficult choices. Thank you. Mr. Martin Liao.
President, high rent has been undermining our overall competitiveness all along. It's also stifled our socio-economic development. Perhaps I'll be blunt with my question, President. In developing land in the future, would the Chief Executive consider increasing the ratio of commercial land? Chief Executive. Where we could increase the supply of commercial land, we would do so. We are actively working on that, but at the same time we have to consider other needs. For example, the Government Hill, originally it was commercial land, but now we have to conserve it. And the Central Market, originally it was commercial land, again, now we must conserve it. Well, I'm not saying that I'm against the conservation. There is a need for that. So we have to take a balanced view. We have to take a long-term view. And in the long term, yes, we need to develop more land and more such projects, including reclamation. I think we have to be prepared for that. Hong Kong does not lack funds. With the momentum of development on the mainland, with the support of the country, we are not short of opportunities. We're not short of technical know-how. We have a lot of talented young people who graduate from universities year after year. So what are we short of? We are short of land at the moment. If we have land, we have buildings, and people will come up with business ideas, and that will help our economy to grow. So I have to ask you for your help. The Town Planning Board, the Legislative Council, district councils, and all sectors of the community, you're all stakeholders. I hope every one of you would work together with the government to promote the development of Hong Kong. we've passed the end time of this question and answer session. The Chief Executive will now leave the chamber. Thank you, President. I now adjourn the Council until 11 a.m. on Wednesday, the 23rd of October, 2013.